Hello, everyone. I've got a special guest on the show today. Her name is Melanie Wood. Welcome, Melanie.
Hello, Pauline. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm so excited because I know that you've got a very rich background of experiences, which we're going to get into the story today as well and extract all the wisdoms. But first of all, I'd like you to introduce yourself to everyone and what do you do?
Yeah, hello everybody, and I'm so honored to be here and for you to tune in and listen to me a little bit more and hope that I can be of service and help for today. So my name is Melanie. I live in the Gold Coast in Queensland, but I'm originally from Scotland. I've been here for 8 years and we will get into that part of the journey, but I want to share some things that I absolutely love to do. I love to go on my beach walks because I am on the coast, so that's something I absolutely love. I love spirituality, meditation, do my yoga, journaling, consuming a lot of astrology. So for me, I'm really big on astrology to find out more about yourself and why we kind of behave the way that we behave. It's been a bit of a game changer for me to find out more about myself as well. So those are stuff that I love to do dancing, love to do some creative painting and really develop that side of myself to be me and really find that identity of the things that I love to be able to do. So I love travel. I love adventure as well, but I'm also a bit of a homebody. So it's like, even though like what I do, I'm still quite an introvert. After doing some speaking gigs and things, I like to just be at home on the couch in my jammies as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, but I know that we'll go into more of that as we go along.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And that's as an introvert, like as well, like you've got a very good like mix of interests there as well, like with the outdoors and the spirituality.
Yeah.
That's like really fascinating. I love the fact that you said be me as well, like that. Yeah, that's so it's very empowering to be able to be yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
So, I'll probably ask you a few questions there as well as we go on. But Melanie, where did this like journey all sort of start for you, like from Scotland, or where you would like to share from?
Yeah, definitely. And for me, really about when I did come to Australia 8 years ago now, like I can't believe it's been 8 years. I feel like it was only yesterday that I came on a plane for a year and thought, well, I'm coming to Australia for a year. Now I've been here 8 years and I'm a citizen. And for me, like I felt from probably a very young age that there was just something more to life, like than just, being at school, having a job, getting a house. Like I got married when I was 21 and I thought that's what we're meant to do as women. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. I was brought up to, you find someone. I met him when I was 18. We got married when I was 21 and thought, well, that's me, a mate. Like, and I had a really good job in the council back home in Scotland. And I wanted to climb the career ladder and thought, well, I've got a house. It's like I'm 20, my future lies ahead of me, and something that I felt this is what I meant to be here to do. And then next would be having children. But for me, inside of me, I just felt like there was something more to life than that. And again, for anybody listening, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the life that you want to live. But for me, I just had that inner calling of something needed to change. But in that time that I was married, I was in an abusive marriage as well. So there was a lot of things in my life that happened, but there was a turning point to that because I actually had a one-way ticket to America. So prior to meeting my ex-husband, I actually had a one-way ticket to America. So my childhood dream was to live abroad, to immigrate. And America was always the place that I really wanted to go because I was taken to America by my parents on holiday. And I had a one-way ticket and went out one night in Glasgow in Scotland. Lots of drink was happening there. I was 17 at the time. And I met my ex-husband and I made the decision and I actually binned the ticket and had a relationship with him. And then it went into being in an abusive marriage. And it's so interesting to look back that I made that choice. But again, I made that choice, I think, more around society than it was about my own identity that I wanted to go to America. And then during that time, I was only with him for around 6 years. And during that time, like I really lost a sense of myself, my own identity, because prior to meeting him, like I was so fearless. Like I was living in other countries prior to meeting him in Europe. And I really had a fearless around adventure and living life. And then when I met him, a lot of that was taken away because I then wasn't able to go out with friends. I then wasn't actually then able to really see family. Like things started to really be restricted for me. And it was easier. It was easier to go along with it because on the other end of that, it was just chaotic. So I just kind of learned to live with basically not really having a life outside of going to work and coming home. So work was like the only thing that I had that was me. But then during that time that I was with him, I probably wasn't the nicest person because I protected myself.
Yeah.
I didn't want anybody in work to ever know what was actually happening in my life because I felt ashamed of what was happening. So I put a front on, but I was probably, that horrible person in the workplace because I was very kind of probably angry and aggressive and very direct to people. And I wanted to keep everything in my workplace in order. Like everything needed to be in order. And if someone put a box or something like out of place, like I was on them.
So you were like wanting to be in control.
Yes, because it was the only place I had to be in control. Because at home life, I didn't have that. So work was my only control.
Yeah, I get that. So I want to just go back just a little bit before we get into the meat of this. But that fearlessness that you had when you said like you were growing up and all of that and the adventurous side of yourself, what was it about the dream of going to America like that really pulled you or, planted the seed for you?
I think when I spent 6 months in Europe and living there, and I was only like 16 and a half, 17. So I was really young at the time. And I loved waking up to the sun. I loved waking up to just the culture and something that was different compared to being in Scotland. And I think for me, there was something in that spending time away from maybe current friends and family, I think was probably the pull for me. And being away for that 6 months, it was like I went away as a child, but came back as an adult. And an adult with being able to make decisions for myself. And I wanted to, I think, just experience it. Like, I just wanted to experience the world. Like, there's so much more for other cultures and different people that can be offered. And sunshine was probably my biggest one. When you live in Scotland, it's not always there. So I think for me, I just felt pulled to the climate, the environment, all of those things. And I think I just felt by going to America, there was just a bigger opportunity to really experience life that I didn't feel like I was having in Scotland.
Yeah. And they call it like the land of opportunities and everything where dreams are made of and all of that stuff. So I guess there's that appeal. Like, I'm sure a lot of people are very drawn to that factor as well. So, okay. But you said that you actually booked a one-way ticket, right?
Yes.
So that was before you were with your ex-partner or?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So then did that come to fruition or what happened there?
So I actually applied to do Camp America. If anybody's heard, Camp America is like where it's like summer, the kids go to the camp and you do like really fun activities and things like that. So I had looked into that. And then, I had then basically signed up, paid a lot of money to do that, to have my flight, to have the visa, to go there. So for me, like, I wanted to do the 3 months and then you'd have a visa to be able to travel afterwards. So I thought, go and do what you need to do for the 3 months. It'll be super fun and exciting. Paid up for that. And then having the 3 months after to travel, but also look at how I could then get a visa to actually stay more. So all of that was signed up. But then when I met my ex-husband, I never even told him. Like, I just literally put it in the bin, and I was getting calls and like just let go of the money, calls and things like that from the company saying, we just need to get you to the next step to finalize everything. And I never told my ex-husband that that's what I was going. And I just made this
what
decision.
was it like? Why did you feel that you couldn't tell him?
I think I felt like it was my one opportunity for love. Like, there was still that part of me that wanted to be accepted and wanted to maybe people please, like, that thing of being brought up to, you get married, you have a good job and you do all of this thing. I think there was still a part of me that wanted to people please, to be accepted and be approved. And I think that's what I ended up doing, and just thought, well, what if this is my one opportunity for love, marriage, kids? And if I go to America, I don't know what's in the other side of that. Maybe the marriage thing was probably more in the known. The going to America was the unknown. And
yeah, so you that sense of certainty, or like fulfilling that that destiny of the traditional route. Where does it come from? Because like some people can relate, but is that from a cultural or family, that kind of strong feeling or sense of needing to belong? What if this is my only opportunity to get married or find the love of my life?
Yeah, and I think it definitely is a cultural thing, and it's definitely a family one, because that's what I've been brought up in. You get married, you have a good job, you put money away for your retirement, like you do everything, like get in a box and stay on at the conveyor belt until you die. And I think as well, for me, it definitely was feeling like I wanted to be loved. I probably was never shown love when I was growing up as a child. So maybe when my ex husband then was there, I think it was maybe showing me the love that I felt like I never had.
So it's fulfilling that need for you.
Yes. And I think I just felt like, it was definitely filling that gap that I didn't have. And I think that was the pull for me to then not go to America, because I thought, well, this is what I feel in the first time of my life, like someone loves me for me. Type thing.
Yeah, and to just not lose that
as
well. So moving on to the marriage side of things, because you said like things weren't so good. So was there was it something that was gradual that you kind of experienced over during the marriage, or like were there signs? Like how did you kind of get yourself or become in that situation where it became like that?
It was definitely gradual. And I was young. He was a lot older than me. So I was 18 when I met him, and he was actually in his early 30s, which I didn't actually know in the beginning. It took like about a year to then actually find that out. He would never let me see anything to then be able to prove that he was that age of what he told me that he was in his 20s.
Right.
And then became gradual. And I think the signs were always there. But again, I turned a blind eye to it, because I just felt, well, someone loves me. So I turned it, and I was quite naive as well. And I'd never really been in a proper relationship. So I didn't really know what one looked like and felt like. So I suppose this for me was just like, well, this is what it's like as well. Being so young. And it did ended up, it started to be gradual, because I was still able to go out. And then we were going out and we were doing things. So it definitely was gradual. It probably was up until actually when we got married that I actually, on the wedding day, I knew that I shouldn't be going through with it. So it probably took like 3 years for me to actually go, oh my God, like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing here? And if I was to look back in my wedding video, the tears were not of happiness and joy. The tears were for fear of, when I make this decision and I go through with it, this could be the end of my life forever type thing. So that was a difficult situation. And we'd actually went to the Caribbean to get married. So we were actually on our own, because we combined it to wedding and honeymoon. Right. So then I was completely on my own. I had no way of backing out, because I was on an island with him completely on my own. So I had to go through with it. But while we were away, things started to massively escalate even more. And I felt so trapped in that moment. And I just went through
it. The abuse side of things, what classifies as abuse? Like, because there's verbal, there's physical, there's like, all sorts of ways that people can feel abused. I've experienced it myself as well from a young age. And so just to give people a bit of an idea, like, what does that look like in a relationship, or in the one that you were in?
Yeah. And I think to speak on mine, because again, there's abuse can be absolutely any of that. There's no abuse that's any different from the other around that. I would say like it was a mixture of kind of mental, emotional, as well as physical. I would have said from my own experience, the kind of mental and emotional was the worst. Because making you feel like there was something wrong with you, or like if you kind of went in and ran a bath and then you're like, I'm going to go away and do stuff, and you come in and it's not there anymore, and then the person says, you didn't run the bath.
So there's like manipulation as
Yes,
well.
yes. A
Yeah.
lot of those things to really second guess yourself
Yeah.
as well. Things around money as well were then starting to come away. And so a lot of those things, then sharing a car to then not being able to have the car, they disappear and you've got to try and get to work. And then you're like, I actually work like nearly an hour away and I actually need to be the person that needs the car. So then you start having to get buses and trains and all of those things that start to happen.
Yeah.
And around mine as well, there was drugs involved as well. So I had, like, you know, my drinks and things like that spiked by him, and he would blame other friends and said it was someone else.
Oh,
So there
wow.
was a lot of that controlling around it, and then not being able to go out with friends because out of that it would just become absolutely chaotic and quite aggressive and things like that going on.
It's a very sort of starts to become a quite possessive relationship from one side, which I've heard is kind of common. Like, you know, you'd be surprised at how many people are in these, but they don't really, like, I don't know if it's the naivety, you know, it could be the age, it might not be, it might just be like you think you don't know any better, like you think it's normal as well, especially if you're in love, right?
Yeah, it does. And I would say, like, it's definitely normal, and it's maybe how you've been brought up with. Like, I look back and I think it's definitely around how you were brought up, not necessarily being that your parents were abusive to you, but I think it comes back down to the need and the love. And if you're used to a certain way in which your family maybe gives you love, you're probably going to go on to a relationship that's exactly the same. Because it's known and it's comfortable. So I kind of, like, it was still comfortable for me because it was very similar to my dad in a way. Like, my dad's not abusive in any way, but definitely around maybe the kind of controlling and the possessiveness. I grew up not being able to do certain things around strict guidelines and things like that. So there was stuff around the possessiveness and the controlling that I was used to and I was comfortable with. Like, it was a known for me, whether it was right or wrong or not, it was known to me. And that was probably the biggest thing. It's the known and the comfortability of it, even if it's wrong.
Yeah, I get that. Where do you think, can you pinpoint a particular, like, time or situation where something clicked, like you knew that, oh, hang on, this is not right, like, you know, because sometimes you can kind of keep, you know, there's like all these things that are happening and you're like, oh, that's normal, I'll deal with that, I'm okay with this, like, you know. But was there a time where you were just like, yeah, this is not right?
Yeah, definitely. And there was probably about 2 years after we got married, and I was starting to probably get to the point where I couldn't hide it anymore. Like, I was exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally, and all of those things. Like, it becomes like your body's in so much stress because you're constantly in fight or flight throughout that duration, and your body can only do that for so long. So things were starting to slip at work. And I think people were starting to kind of look on going, something's not quite right. But people were probably scared to come and speak to me because they weren't too sure how I was going to react to it. But on one of the occasions that I had to get, you know, a taxi, 2 trains, you know, walks, you know, several miles to get to work one day, I then got to work and I couldn't do it anymore. Like, I couldn't hide it. And particularly one of my co-workers at the time, she must have already started to tune into me and know something wasn't right. And I walked into, like, the office space, and she basically, as if like she took her shoes off, she came over to mine, put mine on, and she said, like, are you okay? And in that moment, I knew that I had to voice and say I wasn't, and be okay with whatever was going to happen next. And she was the best person, and I honestly owe her my whole life for doing that, because it changed the course of my life from then on. She had been in a situation similar to mine previously in a marriage. She was the best person that I ended up speaking to and being able to be vulnerable. And in that moment, for an entire year, she literally held my hand, gave me support, never pushed me, never said, like, you better leave. Like, she was there on, you know, several times on weekends where I went to stay with her. And then I still went back. She was there for me throughout the entire time, because she knew this is what you did. This is what you kind of do in these situations. But she also started to help me to build my confidence, but build my way out. So for an entire year, she was there with me. as well through it. And I think that's what I needed, was someone that had been through a situation similar to me, that there was no judgment, there was compassion, but there was also giving me steps in order to do that. So for an entire year, yes, she helped me. And then it got to the point where I did start to go back out again. And my ex-husband hated her because he knew that she was taking me away. So I did then endure more at home, but I was more confident with the fact that I had someone I could talk to.
Mm.
And
you were having some steps as well, as to like how you're going to get out of the situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So my confidence massively grew, which he didn't particularly like. But it got to the point on one night I went out, and there was like some sort of sports thing on, and he was going to have like all the guys back at the home. And it was like maybe going to be 3-4 o'clock in the morning that this was going to be on. And I remember being out thinking, I don't really want to go home to all of this. They're all going to be taking drugs. They're all going to be in my house, and I'm not going to get any sleep. Like, what's the point in going home to that? So I called him and said, I'm just going to stay at my friend's house. And of course he lost it. And something in that moment as well, like my friend was like, hang up, you cannot go home. If you go home, something will happen.
Yeah.
You need to stay here. And I knew if I went home, I don't think I would be here today.
Because it's already in that situation where he was like fueled up about you being away as well.
Yeah. And I think I was just at the point of, it's now been a year. I need to leave. I need to go. And that was kind of the turning point for me, with like, nothing's going to change. It's actually going to get worse. So I stayed with her that whole weekend. And then she came with me back over to the house to come with me so I could pack up some things and then go back to my parents' house. And for me, when he went to go for her, I just absolutely stood up and went, you dare go anywhere near her and touch her, you're going to come through me. So that was another thing for me, is probably the first that I actually stood up to him, was because he went to go for my friend. And I thought, no way. And I never went home. I never went back there again. I left and basically went to a lawyer and did the whole separation thing through a lawyer. Because I thought, I can't be manipulated back. This needs to be done. And for my parents, they needed to know that I wasn't doing this and then coming back for the weekend and then going away again. So I really had to prove to my parents as well that I wasn't going to continue to put them through all of this as well. But that's when I made that decision, that I was ready to make that decision and leave.
Yeah. And it's not an easy decision. I can imagine, like, I mean, it took you, that whole year of sort of, this having your friends' support and everything. And you mentioned about like gaining more confidence, like during that year. What were like the steps, or what was sort of the plan in terms of for you to navigate? Because 1 year is a long time for someone to still endure, like, some people might even do it for longer or shorter, whatever it is, because it's not as simple as like, I'm gonna just, your friend tells you, okay, you just pack up and then like, just go to your parents' house and then grab your stuff and we just like, let's just leave, like, I think people who aren't in that situation or have never been think that it's simple to just go like, well, why did she just just leave, right? But talk us through, like, are there any concrete steps or things that you were able to navigate throughout that year that with the new confidence that you were gaining to sort of slowly go like, okay, then when you get to this point, enough is enough, I can then pack up?
Yeah, definitely. Things like I did, like I opened up a new bank account so that I had one for me. So I started to open a bank account and started to put some money into there throughout my pay or whatever else was happening. So I opened up my own bank account without him knowing. I then also as well put a lot into my career. Like I changed jobs. Like I started university, like not university at that point, but I went back to college and I started to do things at night. So I really started to go like, what do I want to do? If I'm going to leave here, like, what do I want on the outside? Like start going in. So I put a lot into my job to really consume myself. So work and then going to college. So then I was doing things at night. So I was doing like a higher qualification. So that was taking up a lot of my time. because I was studying a lot, doing my job. And I just started to really just get the confidence to start meeting my friends again and be okay with whatever was going on. But also through my friend was really understanding that the control and the possessiveness was more his own insecurities. And if I actually started to be able to push back, things then would start to change, which they did, because then he knew that I wasn't going to be controlled anymore. I mean, sometimes we're bad and sometimes we're good throughout all of it. So the confidence was I started to find myself again with being able to meet my friends, start going to see my family. So that was really the steps that my friend helped me to do, was start just doing the little things to make that change, because then you've got more on the outside for when you leave. You're starting to build your life again. So then when you leave, you're not going to be massively consumed with your own thoughts in the beginning, because you're like, well, I'm studying, I'm meeting friends again, like I'm doing all of this stuff. So then it's not like you're going to miss being in that situation as well. And that, so I think that was really the steps for me, was doing the little things each week to build myself to then creating a life that I could then look forward to when I actually then ended up leaving. And again, I suppose just really going to like switch off to what was happening at home as well. I know that that's not always easy because it's very consuming. And I think I started to get back into like fitness. I would just do stuff at home. So like I bought equipment and started to do some fitness things at home. So that, again, it was a bit of partnering up with, like, I wasn't out all the time, like at least I was doing stuff at home. So I kind of started to learn the balancing of going out to making sure the stuff that I was doing at home as well, so that I wasn't creating the chaoticness of everything.
Yeah, because if you just go out and start going out with your friends and doing all the things you want to do, then they're definitely going to cause some chaos if you're not around.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, like, it sounds like it's like you were pretty much building that bridge. That's the essential goal, is that you're building that bridge of, okay, like there's this other life, there are these other things, people, education, different goals that you were working towards for yourself. So that the in-betweens, I mean, that's your relationship, but then you knew that you had sort of that foundation in place for the next thing, which I guess gives people a lot of confidence, because when you don't know what's on the other side, or that unknown, it's harder to then be able to leave.
Yeah, because then it's the aloneness and the loneliness part of it as well, that at least you have someone and you are getting the love, even if it's not right, then to move away and then you're on your own again, and the person knows that you are, so they know how to get you back in, which was happening in the past, to do that. Whereas like when I made that decision, he knew that I had too many people around me. I mean, there was still threats and things like that, but I think I just knew that they were just false threats. Like he probably wouldn't go through with it.
Yeah. Okay. There was this one thing that's been pressing. Now it's gone. It's gone.
That's all right.
Oh, there was something there. Yeah, I can't remember. Maybe I'll come back to it.
I was going to say it. Maybe we'll pop back in again.
Yeah, it will come back. Okay, so in terms of, it's like almost like you're building a new independence. You're building that new identity, that new life. So after that's right, it's come back.
Yeah.
You said that, like, when you know that moment of like going to the office and like you were during this time before the friend came to you, when you said that people don't know how to react, or they don't want to approach, and because I'm sure that this is quite common, where you do see your colleagues and people or families and all that stuff around you, that something's not right, but then it's very hard to like I guess for the person to open up, or for you to feel like you can approach them. What now that in hindsight, what would you I mean, your friend, she had some experience in that, like she could relate, right? So she was the right person. But is there anything that anyone can do if they didn't have that friend who, you know,
Mm-hmm.
if they felt like no one could approach them, no one understands them, they're lonely, like, you know, I'm sure that a lot of these thoughts come up where people are like, people don't get it. So like, why would I open up to anyone?
Yes.
Is there anything that anyone can do if they're noticing a close one or someone that they know that is going through something, but they don't know what it is? Is there anyone that, can they do anything? Or is there anything that, I guess, from the person, like the person who's going through this experience, in you in this case, I mean, would you even be comfortable with like opening up to someone like who, you know, if it's not the right time or it's not the right person, like how do we approach the situation to make sure that people are safe around us?
Yeah, and it is, because I think she was the best person. If it had been anybody else, I probably would have reacted and went like, what do you mean? Like, I'm fine. Like, I know that I probably would have done that. But I think for, you know, and it's things that I share with people now is like, if you're, you know, because then it becomes like that I'm seen as maybe the person who creates chaos in the workplace, you know, so then people ignore me. Right. So, you know, I'm not the only person that this has happened to, or you've got someone else that's going through things in the workplace, and then everybody avoids them because they don't know how to deal or speak to that person. So like when I look at it from the other point of view with the people who have someone like me in their workplace, like what I kind of say to people is that just start it. You don't have, I probably wouldn't go up and ask the person like, are you okay? I know we have all this thing about, are you okay? But to be honest, most people are in there for, they're going through something like me. Of course, you're going to say you're fine. So I would say like it's kind of going in from a friend approach, and like just start asking questions with, you know, something maybe they're wearing, or what are you doing at the weekend, and just kind of like come from that friend approach and with compassion, and just listen to the person. And I think it's be okay with, if you think something's going on for that person and you do go over and want to do the friend approach, and the person like snaps about it in the way in which they're saying, it's like not taking that personally either. It's like you've kind of got to be okay with yourself that that might happen in the interim. But the more that you can kind of build that rapport and a relationship with people, it's not necessarily still the person will say to you, but it's just building some more of the trust, the more of the listening. So if the person did feel they could then share with you, then they probably will at some point. But if you're just consistently checking in with the person, you know, find out more and more, maybe find out more interests about the person, like really come from that place so that it's not directly asking, are you okay? You know, you don't seem yourself today, because that is probably going to instill more reaction than it would be to maybe compliment them on something, to taking an interest on something, and maybe starting to share ideas and share things that could be shared with the person.
Yeah, that's a really good, you know, some solid advice there, because I mean, in society, like you mentioned as well, there's just all this like movement and, you know, make sure that you're checking up on people and all that. But I was like, I don't relate to it. Like, I'm like, well, I don't think that you can, like if someone's going through something, it's very hard for them to, you know, usually either in denial, defense, like angry, like, you know, who are you to be talking to me? Like, or, you know, like if you're coming in cold as well, it just, you don't go around just ask your friends, like, hey, send 10 text messages, are you okay? Do you know what I mean? Like, I guess it's just more like, it's good that there's awareness, that there's things going on, but I guess like it's good to hear it from someone who's gone through an experience, and like, you know, how can someone better approach these kind of people, or like you know, how can the person going through it like feel more safe?
Yes, well, that's the thing. It's the big thing of the person doesn't feel safe anywhere. So that's the biggest thing. So of course they're not going to feel safe to voice in a workplace if they don't feel safety anywhere. Like that's the you know, the hierarchy of needs. Like we want to feel safe. If we're not feeling safe in our home life, we're particularly not going to feel safe in our workplace either.
Now very valuable. Okay, so come to you know, the escape. So like, you know, the year is over. You've got all these things, the infrastructure's in place, right? So you're ready to go. Talk us through, like, so what happened next? How did you move? Or like what happened?
So I went back to my parents. So I would have been like mid-20s, going back to living with my parents again. Very interesting.
Did they know as well?
they don't know they don't really, and they probably still don't know the big picture to it. They've heard some things because I've obviously done podcasts and things that they've listened to, but it's not something that you don't talk about that kind of stuff.
You
don't talk about that kind of stuff with my family. So they kind of know, but they probably don't know the in-depth of it. But I was also doing it to protect them, because I think if my dad fully knew, I was probably more scared of, if my dad was to come down to the house, I knew what my ex-husband was capable of, and I was probably more scared of something bad happening to my dad. So it was just easier to really just not bother type thing out of it. So I moved back in with my parents, and I literally then spent another 18 months just partying, like to numb the pain of all of it. I just went out and partied every single weekend to completely just band-aid and numb everything that had happened over the last 6-7 years. And so I was just falling in all the time at whatever time in the morning, drunk. So my parents were used to, and they couldn't really then tell me what to do, because I was in my mid-20s as well.
Yeah.
So then I think it was like about a year I spent doing that. Plus I was still going through stuff with lawyers, separation, we had a house together. So like there was still a lot of all of those things that needed done. And I was also being contacted by him to come back. So there was probably still a lot in that year of dealing with all of those things as well, and even still doing it through lawyers. So I just think I just needed the freedom to just let loose for the entire year, to just be able to be a bit more freer, but numb the pain of it all. And then I still put myself into my job and, climbed the career ladder. And, then I went to university as well as working full time. After a year, I just went, once we sold the house, I was like, I need to find a house of my own. I can't live with my parents anymore. This is driving me crazy. So after the year after that, the house was sold, then I ended up within that 6 months later, I then got my own house and did that. But it was still very, like, I remember, and just something I just remembered there, like out of being in the marriage and everything that was happening, the bathroom was always my savior, because I could lock the door. And I remember, and so in that part as well, like I did look into obviously committing suicide, because it got to the point where I was like, I don't want to be here anymore, and I didn't know how to leave. So that would have been prior to my colleague. And I didn't want to be here. And I remember, and I'm not religious in any way, like I wasn't growing up in the church or anything like that. So very atheist in that way. And I remember like praying to God, just like with a razor in my hand, going like, if you can get me out of this, I will work for the rest of my days, making sure that these sort of things don't happen to other people. And then that's when I feel like my colleague came in, like all these things started to come in. But then when I left, I ended up having this like 12 years of, I might still as well have been in the relationship, because I hadn't moved on. After, as much as I wasn't living there anymore, I hadn't moved on, because I was still really cynical to then move on to another relationship. Then I started thinking all men are like that. There was all of this that snowballed into, it was like Groundhog Day, but I'd thrown myself so much into work to numb the pain. So I was still numbing the pain, consuming myself with uni, with work, and all of these things, and then having my identity attached to work, because it was the only. So you
swapped the identity, like before it was like the wife and the whatever, the partner and stuff, and then it became into work because you spend so much time there.
And really climbing the career ladder and getting into management and leadership, because there was still a part of me that went, I don't want to be told what to do, because that's the way that I felt like growing up I was then in the marriage. So then got into management positions, but you kind of then remember that you still have someone above you at all areas type thing as well. And then in jobs, and I think like I arrived, like I was kind of coming to the end of finishing my leadership and management degree. I was in that role, and then it was like I arrived and thought, well, I don't feel any different. Like, it's one of those things where you feel like when I achieve this, I'll feel like this. So it was very much around, I arrived, I had my own house, I had a really good car. And then I just thought, I think I'm just going to change my life, because I feel like there's nothing's coming out of this to help me change. But again, I wasn't going into the trauma. And in that time, I think it was like 29, 30, I had that calling again of like, when are you going to wake up and like do something that you're meant to be here to do? Like, when are you going to listen? And I went through a lot of health challenges as well throughout the way, particularly through trauma. And things like go to hospital, nobody would really kind of figure out what it was. All of these things would happen, you know, because again, it's more trauma based, emotions are blocked. So then nobody really knows what's wrong with you. So you kind of get sent off with a band-aid or a drug and
yeah, kind of hard to tell, especially when, when it's like energy that's stuck in your body, you know, from things like that's where trauma gets, it's in the body, right? And then it manifests itself in different ways. So then very hard to detect. I was going through a stage where I was like at the doctor's every week, and it was like my best friend, like, you know, I was like, there you again, what's going on now? And it's like, oh, like, no, I don't know what's going on, like nothing, that you're normal, you know, maybe it's just stress, because it's not something that can be detected.
Well, that's right.
What was your experience like? What kind of, I guess, health challenges, you know, which you mind sharing, like that you were experiencing?
Definitely. So for me, gynecological. So of course that would be where I would store the trauma, being in that type of relationship and being in that relationship where it's not love. So of course, when you're then intimate with someone, you're going through that, like that's not what love is either. So for me, then I've stored it in that region. So there was always constantly like pain, getting to the point of pain and passing out, things like that, you know, again, cycles, all of those things where they would kind of like, I'd be ready to go in for surgery because they detected something in a scan. And then you'd go in for the day, they'd do another scan just to check before they put you under. And then the thing that was there before has suddenly disappeared. You know, those types of things that were happening all the time was probably a lot of pain. And then I went through different things with like, well, they can't do operations, so let's look at, you know, chronic pain medicine and, you know, all of these types of things. So for me, it was all based there, and things that they couldn't really find, or it was like, go on the pill, you'll be fine. So it was all those sort of things that I never got answers for, or it was hereditary and like all of these things. So they were a lot of my health challenges, particularly, and definitely around like pain and things like that. And again, not really having answers to any of it. And
how did you get the answers? Did you end up getting the answers?
No. And it's still something I deal with today, not as much because I've got more understanding to what's going on there. So then I see the right people now. You know, I don't go to the hospital. I have had surgeries and stuff like that because things have come to a head, but it's more about now, it's about emotional healers and different coaches that I go to help in that area now, because I've been addressing it for the past 8 years. But prior to that, it would have been more like, going to the doctors every day, or going to, you know, A&E because you've collapsed because of the pain. Those sort of things where I was just like, it was like I was crying for help and no one was listening. That's really probably what I can say, is it's like your inside is like screaming at you, but you've not been exposed enough to any other means of holistic therapy. Because your body's like, you need to kind of look at this. We're kind of screaming at you, but you know, you're not listening, and the people outside aren't listening either. So for me, like I went through a lot of that where I put everything on hold. But the health challenges, and I think like just going into that, probably depression as well through all of it, because I'm just like, why is life so hard this way? And why do I just feel like everything's dark? It's like I've left the marriage, but I kind of still feel like I'm there.
It's like I don't know if haunting is the right word, but it follows you, because you know, like that trauma, the events happened, but then then you're dealing with the aftermath as well, because it hasn't really been healed. It's just like, you know, they punctured the wound, and then it's like you're just dealing with that afterwards. A lot of people don't realize that, you know, at the time maybe it's kind of an experience, right? Because you had to have the event happen, then you've got to maybe go through a stage of, you know, not knowing what's going on, numbing, doing all the things that to help you get through it.
Yes.
But then there's after that, it's like, oh, if those coping mechanisms haven't helped to heal
Yeah.
the wound, then looking at whether it's Eastern medicine, Western
Yes.
medicine, like looking at other ways as well.
Yes, it's definitely, you do end up, and things have then led me to now more around that kind of energy healing and holistic therapy, over the last few years. It's definitely led me that way as well, which I'm super grateful for, to then be able to actually go through that fear and go through it as well and deal with it.
Mm-hmm. And come to, I guess, the next phase of moving on from that.
Yeah.
So after that, then, as you're going through this journey that you've been on as well, what else major, or how else has your life changed since then?
Yeah. So in those moments where I just felt, again, I got that itchy feet of, you need to do something, like this is not what you're here to do, currently where you are, 9-10 years ago. And I was like, well, and again, I didn't know anything about self-development or spirituality or anything like that, but I knew something wasn't right inside. And then that's where my friend back home in Scotland had said about, going on holiday to Australia to come for a month. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'm into travel. I'd always been into travel, even when I was with my ex-husband, we did do traveling, going on holiday and things. And so I was like, yeah, let me know when you want to go, and I'll have to see about work, because taking a month off might be a little bit too much. And then she came back to me and said, we're still in the right age bracket to then do like a year working holiday visa in Australia. And I was like, oh my God, I so want to do that, but I don't know how I'm going to do that, because I've got a really good job in the council. I don't want to let that go, because to go for a year and then come back and start from the bottom again. I've got a house, a car, all of these things. And but then again, I felt that calling that was like, this is like your American ticket has been appeared to you again. Like, which one are you going to choose? This is now, I felt like there was like a second chance at life in that moment. And it was like, which one are you going to choose again? The home life type thing, or are you going to choose the actual adventure that you're here to do?
Yeah.
So then when she said a year, and she wanted to go 6 months prior to then when I would finish my degree. And I said, if you can wait 6 months, I said, I will come for the year and I'll do whatever I can with everything else, but I can't go until I finish uni. And anyway, she went away and thought about it and went, well, I want to come with you for the year. So yes, I'll put it on hold for another 6 months. And out of that, I took a career break from my job. I rented out my house. My brother took my car. All of the things started to really happen. But the biggest thing for me was someone gave me the book, The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. If anybody listening, either go on Netflix and watch the documentary. It's all about law of attraction and manifestation. And I was given to it by a friend. And I want you to really kind of imagine and picture the most cynical Scottish red-headed person that you can think of. Braveheart might come to mind. And then someone gives that person the Secret by Rhonda Byrne that says, you have to take responsibility for all of the things that have happened in your life. And you've heard, a bit of my story that I've shared. I remember throwing the book back at the person and thinking, well, that's a bunch of BS. No way.
Yeah.
And then she gave it back to me and said, well, read it again with an open mind. And I thought, well, part of me was like, I don't want to be closed-minded, so let's read it again. And I
read it, yes. And then you were like, this is BS.
Yes. I was just like, no way. Who's this person? Who are these people in this book telling me all of this stuff,
You dream it and it comes to life.
I was like, are you kidding me? For the last 15 years, if you'd seen my life, you just wouldn't be saying something like that.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't understand it, because I had been exposed to that before. So I read it again, and then I watched the documentary. So for me, it was the touch points of twice reading it to then one watching it. And then I started to go, okay, maybe there's something in here. And it's I had to kind of go through all of that to then now come to Australia, which was never on my radar. I would never have even came to Australia on a holiday. It just seemed so far away. spiders, snake, like all the things that I feel like that could kill you were living in this country. And I just thought, why would anybody go there? And then in that 6 months, like I consumed like no tomorrow, like spirituality, self-development. Like I was that person that was like, I just need to consume, I need to get attached and numb everything else out. And I was going to read all these books, right? So I read all these books, then came to Australia. And then when I arrived, I was like, oh my God, like I'm home. Like I felt just completely drawn and centered, and just really like I felt like I belonged when I came to Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this is me. Like there's no going back in a year. Like I will stay here. I'm staying.
Mm-hmm.
I said,
it ticked your boxes.
Yeah, it ticked everything. It ticked everything. And I said to my friend, like, I won't leave. And she said, like, you've just arrived. Like, how do you know that? And I said, I don't know, but I just do. Like I know this is where I went to be. And so that was 8 years ago that I came to Australia, and it was a turning point. I'm saying hasn't been easy, because I've had to obviously face a lot of all of my trauma and fears along the way at the same time. But for me is that I don't say to people like, oh, move to another country in order to make the changes, because one of the turning points for me was, you're still the same person no matter what country you're at. So yes, there's sunshine and there's amazing beaches and things, but the feeling that I was feeling was still inside of me, type thing. So I think from there is that, like, I spent a year in Brisbane in Australia, and still, again, I was going out partying and all of this stuff, and thought, well, I'm here to have fun. Mm-hmm. But then when my friend left, and then I had to sort out visas to be able to stay in the country, I then actually had to move from Brisbane to central Queensland, more regional, in order to stay in the country. So that was an even bigger challenge and an even bigger, like, life-changing opportunity for me, because I come from Glasgow to then move to Brisbane, big cities, right? Going out drinking, all of these things, then to move to a country town. I was like, oh my God, like, this is like
to my dream.
I was like, oh my God. But I wanted to stay in the country more than I wanted to breathe air, because I just thought, I don't want to go home and deal with that person back home and deal with all the stuff back home in Scotland. I want to be here because I'm meant to be here to do stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I moved to central Queensland, and I probably wasn't great for a few months. I felt quite depressed. I was meant to be there for 2 years. And I was quite then tied to up there for 2 years and a job at the same time. And I just felt like I didn't have friends. And then I just thought, well, why is life always so hard? Like, I kept going back to, like, life's so hard. Like, how can I not just, like, flow through things and all of these things? But again, it's what we're here to do. And then after I kind of got over myself, and I got over the fact that every time I went to the same cafe, the person, like, knew my name, knew what coffee I liked, and I'd only been there 2 days. And I thought, well, that's weird. I'm not used to that. Something in it's changed for me. And I started to see, like, this is a whole community, and, like, there's something in this. And I started to make friends, and I started to see, like, okay, you're here for 2 years, like, make the best of it. Like, this is 2 years, make the best of it. There's a reason to why you're here. Mm-hmm. To let everybody know, I ended up there for 5 years. So it ended up being really good.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So from 2 years and then to extend to 5.
I know, exactly. Well, again, you build a life for 2 years. And if being in a smaller town, a smaller community, you end up building a home, you build friendships, you build so much more. And then I really put it to myself was, when the moment's right, I will know when to leave. And until then, I'm just going to stay here and do whatever it is that I'm meant to be here to do, or to learn and be open and exposed to it. Mm-hmm. But in that time that I was up there, I really started to meet a lot of different people. And public speaking for me had been a massive, massive fear of mine. And coming from a managerial background, like, I used to avoid really having, like, difficult conversations, chairing meetings, like all of that. And I come from having very large staffs of team as well. And, like, to put me then in the front of, like, doing a staff meeting, I was like, no way, like, I'm so not doing that. That freaks me out. And I'm sure for a lot of other people. Yeah. So doing any of that public speaking was something that I was so fearful of, but started to meet people, and people were going to, a thing called Toastmasters. And I was like, well, people just volunteer and you go to this thing where you all get up and speak in front of a room. Like, is that I don't understand how that works. And that's really weird.
And how is that fun?
I know, it's like really not fun. That's like my worst nightmare. But there was something in it, and I went along and thought, okay, I'll go along. Because of course, when you go along for your first time, you don't have to get up and speak in front of people. So I thought, well, I'll go along and see what it's like. But I remember just cringing, thinking, if I go to this, like, I'm going to have to do that. And that's really quite scary.
Yeah.
Really
would
scary.
be like public speaking is like a number one fear for a lot of people, right?
I know, like worse than death. So, but then again, I just thought, well, you're here for this time. You wanted to come and have adventure. You wanted to have fun. You wanted to overcome fear. Well, here's one right here on a silver plate for you. So let's just go for it. And people were really nice and things like that. People were really supportive. So I started to see, well, let's just go do your first talk and like see how you go from there. I mean, I was super nervous. I thought I was going to vomit prior to it, all of those things. But in that time, like, I just thought, well, continue to do it because there's obviously something in it. And while I was up there, I ended up creating a brand new Toastmasters club for entrepreneurs. So I always thought like I wanted to be in business. I just didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
But in there in a country town, it was like there was a lot of older people there that were just kind of like going for like socializing. And I thought, well, I want to be around like go-getters. I want to be around business people, entrepreneurs. So I went to someone and said, like, can you create like a brand new club here? Like, how does this work? And he's like, definitely go for it. And I developed an entrepreneurs Toastmasters club in that town, and brought a whole heap of business people together, 6:30 in the morning. So then I stepped into what was comfortable to be more of a leader as well, and creating that for other people. And then I started to overcome, my fear, because I was doing speeches, but I was also helping other people to overcome that and grow their businesses. So for me, I started to see that speaking was the fastest way to grow your business, to get your confidence. Yeah. So I started to see all of this happening by me creating this club. But then I also got so well known in that community. Like, we were then emceeing different things with community events. So I was doing a lot of stuff. And, in a very short time, I made a very big impact. I was very well known in that community as well.
That's amazing.
Doing all of those things. So I think like I built so much confidence in myself, and people started to see something in me. So people would start to come to me and say, like, this is what you do. Like, I don't think they even knew that I had a job. I think this is just what they saw that I did. And this was my profession of speaking.
Yeah.
And they'd come to me saying, I've got this presentation coming up. Can you help me? And really for me, that becomes the next kind of stage of my life, that overcoming a fear, coming to another country. And as I say, it hasn't been smooth sailing. I have had a lot of challenges along the way. But doing something that I was so fearful of, and again, overcoming the trauma, communication has been my healing throughout it, to then come back to my own identity. But it's also about giving other people a voice, and not necessarily anybody that has been through my situation. I mean, absolutely, I'm more than happy to share and help people in that. But I just see it as, if we all have a voice, we can all help and impact other people. So for me, that became that next stage for me, was I kind of fell into it, and then I started a business. And then I've been in business, for the past 5 years, speaking and teaching other people how to do the same.
Yeah. So you really just, it's very like natural sort of how it all sort of evolved, and you were almost like pulled towards this, and, in the right position at the right time with, how to come up with these ideas. When you said about the, before, when you climbed the corporate ladder, you didn't feel any different, although you thought, you achieved and ticked those boxes and it was the same. How are things different now in terms of how you feel, within your life now, knowing that this something is there, you've got this something going on? How are things different from then and now?
I think now, because in creating my business, and even though like Toastmasters did help, like the way in which I teach public speaking is very opposite. Because for me, it was more about me coming in with being authentic, to being more about, for me, it's about, if I was working with you, Pauline, then it's more about, who's Pauline? Like I can give you the kind of structure in that, but I want it to be that you come through as well. So for me, then having I suppose I have more freedom to help people, but help people be themselves. So that for me is like such an amazing place to be in. And again, you've not got because I've got more freedom to be myself, more freedom to grow. Like you don't have the glass ceilings that you do in a workplace. So I suppose I can then create my life, create my business the way in which I want it to be. But it's also the fact that I'm creating more of identity of myself. And not so much through a workplace. In the beginning of my business, my identity was definitely attached to my business. And I've had to develop that and change that and actually come back to me. So that's like my biggest thing, is that I then am able to help people be themselves and create a life, whether it's outside of work, create it outside of business, and really having people have their identity of themselves, and your business or your workplace becomes a bonus to all of those things. So then I suppose I then have the freedom to communicate more freely. I then have more freedom to speak to people that I want to be able to speak to as well, compared to what I did there. Because you come in, I suppose, come from a workplace, like not everybody wants to hear it. Everybody just wants to, like, I'm not saying that in all workplaces, but a lot of the time it's people just want to come to work, get the work done and go home. And they don't want to listen to you maybe being there to help make some changes and make some impact. So I feel that was probably a lot harder to do. And then I have been then known for coaching and training people in the workplace, but then that hasn't always went down well with my own management either. So then I have more freedom to now coach and train and do that from a completely different place, which is very, very special.
What an inspiring and courageous journey that you've been on, because I feel like we went through so many facets of your life to take you on, you really took us on this journey. And really it comes back to, like, that thing you said at the beginning of this conversation about the freedom to be me.
Yeah.
Right. Like we've come full circle. So that's amazing. And, I guess something that you can feel very proud that you've come so far to be able to help people really just, coming from you, of like going through your journey, not knowing who you are, losing your identity because of attachment to certain things, and then really coming back to you, like finding your own identity through your own journey.
Definitely. It's so important. It's so important for all of us as well. And that's why I absolutely love to be able to help people be themselves.
Yeah. And in terms of, I guess, Melanie, the work that you do now, what are you working on these days?
Yeah. So for me, again, I'm always evolving and going through my own journey. I'm sure as everybody else, we all evolve. And for me, with my business, it is coming back to that identity. So for me, it's more about bringing spirituality and more about conscious communication to really help people to be able to speak with authenticity, but speak from the heart. So for me, it's probably more of a gentle approach now than it was at the beginning of my business. So that's really what I'm working on, is really giving people that confidence to speak up for themselves, to whether it's in their home life, to whether it's work or business. And it's not about aggression. It's just being able to help people to voice their needs, their wants, their desires, as well as people that want to share their message and story. So it's going from everyday people, we're all everyday people that just want a bit more confidence, to then people that really want to reach more people, talk on stage, do all of those. But it's really coming back to speaking from the heart, speaking with authenticity. So those are all the things that I'm really bringing together to be able to help people, and particularly what we've all went through in the world. I think more so than now, it's really about that compassion. It's really about our own identity. It's about mindset, and really bringing all of those things in, that when we're communicating is where I'm heading.
Yeah, that's a great package. And is there anything that, I guess, like people, if people want to learn more from you, where can they find you, or what have you got for them?
Yeah, so I have an amazing freebie. So I'm all about transformation, as you are, Pauline, on this podcast. But again, out of sharing my story, it's about transformation. So I have a freebie that takes people on a transformation from caterpillar to cocoon to butterfly. So really being able to help you with your speaking, with your storytelling. Then it's a really good 15 steps. It's a downloadable PDF, and you do get me for a couple of more emails that I talk you through the PDF as well, to help people to be able to make sense of it as well and really take the steps to do that. So that's a really good freebie to be able to download and take some steps with that. And again, follow me on social media, whether it's Speaking Styles is my business or Melanie Wood, then please do connect and follow.
Yeah, wonderful. And I can drop all the links in the show notes for anyone who wants to find out more.
Yeah.
And I always like to sort of end the show with a couple of questions for you. And that is, we are on the Journey to Fulfillment podcast.
Yes.
So at this stage of your life, after everything that you have been through, what does fulfillment mean to you?
Fulfillment means to me is the freedom to be yourself. That's really fulfillment, not to look externally for things. It's more about coming back to me, of fulfillment of how I feel and the freedom to be me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. Freedom to be you.
Mm.
And lastly, if you imagine that you've conquered everything that you wanted to, like on this earth, you've already, have this amazing and like courageous journey that you've been on, but in the next period of time that you've got left, and you've accomplished, you've impacted thousands or millions of lives in this. Everyone has a voice, and they're making an impact in their own way, and they have the freedom to be themselves, right? What kind of, if it was your last day on earth, what would be the message that you want to send them or leave us with?
I would say that, like, don't wait until tomorrow. Like, say it now. Like, say what it is that's in your mind or in your heart. Like, say it today. Don't wait until tomorrow, because tomorrow actually never comes. Like, so I say now is the new later. So if you've got something, you've got that extra burning desire inside of you to share, to speak, to communicate to people, do it today and don't wait for tomorrow. Yep,
amazing. Thank you for the wise words, and thank you so much for your time and your sharing of your story and wisdom on this show today. And really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Pauline, for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome.